To become the perfect holy warriors, the Knights Templar had to create a set of rules that made them invincible, but those same rules made them inhuman and ultimately indefensible. Their strength was literally their weakness, a paradox encoded in their founding principles. We are about to uncover the 5 forbidden laws that sealed their doom. These were not mere regulations. They were a spiritual alchemy, designed to burn away the man and leave only the warrior monk. They were the knight's greatest strength and their most fatal secret. To understand their fall, you must first understand the vows that lifted them so close to heaven they cast a shadow over the entire world. Number 1. The Law of the Unbreakable Line. Imagine you are standing in the dust of the Holy Land. The sun is a hammer of brass. Before you, the Saracen cavalry gathers like a storm cloud, their scimitars catching the light. You are a Knight Templar, clad in iron and faith. You feel fear, of course you do. It is human, but you are forbidden from acting on it. The Templar rule was absolute. No knight could break formation. No knight could retreat unless the battle was truly, irreversibly lost. A decision made not by you, but by your commander. To turn your back was not just cowardice. It was sacrilege. It was a sin against the order itself. You were commanded to stand, to fight, and if necessary, to die, even if you were outnumbered 3-1. This wasn't a strategy. It was a creed. By removing the option of individual survival, the law erased the individual himself. You were no longer a man fighting for your life. You were a single, living stone in the wall of God's fortress. Your life was not your own to preserve. It was a resource to be spent by the order for the glory of Christ. Think of the psychological weight of this. 1,000 men, each one having sworn an oath to become a willing martyr. They didn't just fight like they had nothing to lose. They fought like they had already lost it. And for 2 centuries, this law made them invincible. But it also planted a seed. It taught the world that a Templar's life had no value to himself. It was a lesson their enemies would remember. Number 2. The Law of the Empty Hands. When you joined the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon, you came with nothing, and with nothing you would remain. The vow of poverty was not unique, but the Templars took it to a terrifying extreme. You were forbidden from owning anything, not a single coin, not the horse you rode, not even the mantle on your back. It all belonged to the order. You could not receive personal letters without your master's permission, and they had to be read aloud in his presence. You could have no personal lockbox, no hidden compartment, nothing that was yours and yours alone. The ego, the very sense of I, was to be systematically dismantled. Now juxtapose this with the reality of the order. The Knights Templar became the wealthiest institution in the world, inventing international banking and holding the treasuries of kings in their vaults. An unimaginable river of gold flowed through the order's hands, but not a single drop could touch the skin of an individual knight. This created a paradox the world could not understand. How could an order be so rich, yet its members so poor? To the outside world, it looked like hypocrisy, but for the Templar, it was the point. The law was designed to create a man immune to the temptations of the world, a man whose only loyalty was to the brotherhood that clothed and fed him. It made him incorruptible, but it also made him an enigma. The law of empty hands filled the order's coffers, but hollowed out the knight's humanity in the eyes of others. They saw not piety, but a strange and unnerving hive, a collective that amassed power for purposes no one could truly fathom. The pact was broken, and with it, the trust of the common man. Number 3. The Law of Severance. When you took your vows, you did more than pledge your sword. You renounced your blood. A Templar was forbidden from most forms of contact with his family. Your father, your mother, your brothers, they were now ghosts from another life. You were born again into a new family, the Order. And most severe of all was the separation from women. A Templar could not kiss his own mother. He could not be in the presence of a woman alone. The white mantle of the Order was a symbol of absolute purity, a vow of chastity so strict that it sought to erase the very memory of worldly affection. This was not simply about preventing temptation. It was a deeper, more profound act of spiritual engineering. The bonds of love, of family, of kinship, these are the anchors that tie a man to the world. The Templars believed that to serve God absolutely, these anchors had to be cut. Every ounce of your loyalty, your love, your devotion had to be redirected inward to the Order and to God. You were to become an island, connected only to the archipelago of your brothers. For a time, this law forged the most cohesive and disciplined fighting force on Earth. A brotherhood of men who had nothing and no one else. But how could the world trust an order of men who had forsaken their own mothers? This unnatural separation bred suspicion. Rumors began to fester in the darkness created by this law. Vicious whispers of secret rites, of unholy bonds formed in the absence of natural ones. The Law of Severance was meant to create saints, but in the minds of their enemies, it created monsters. Number 4. The Law of the Unspoken. What happened behind the closed doors of a Templar preceptory? No one knew, and that was the law. The initiation rites, the chapter meetings where the Order's business was conducted, they were shrouded in an oath of absolute secrecy. To reveal what was said or done within those sacred walls was a crime punishable by expulsion, a fate worse than death for a man who had given up everything. You could be a Templar for 20 years and never know the full extent of the Order's plans. Secrecy was layered like an onion, and only those in the innermost circle held the deepest truths. This was a practical measure born in a time of war and espionage. But it became something more. It became a culture, a mystique. The Templars moved through the world as men who knew something you did not. Their silence was a form of power. It created an aura of authority and wisdom that drew kings and merchants to them, seeking to entrust them with their secrets and their gold. But secrets are a double-edged sword. While they inspire awe, they also breed paranoia. The common man could see the Templars' wealth, their fortresses, their political power, but they could not see their hearts. They could not hear their prayers. They knew not what they swore in the dead of night. The Law of the Unspoken built a wall not of stone, but of silence. And when the accusations came, when the king's propagandists began to paint pictures of heresy and devil worship, the Templars had no defense. Their long-held silence had already convinced the world they had something to hide. Their greatest political asset became their most damning piece of evidence. Number 5. The Law of the Unransomed Soul. This is the final law, the one that completes the transformation from man to symbol. A Knight Templar could not be ransomed. If you were captured by the enemy, the vast wealth of the Order would not be used to buy your freedom. Other knights, noblemen, even kings could be bought back from captivity, but not you. Your choice was simple. Renounce your faith and live as a traitor, or be executed. The law demanded you become a martyr. It was the final, total expression of the Order's ownership over your existence. Your life was a weapon, and your death was its final glorious purpose. This instilled a terrifying resolve in the Templars, and a chilling dread in their foes. How do you defeat an enemy who does not value his own life? But think of the message this law sent to the world. It declared that a Templar was fundamentally different from other men. His soul was forged of a harder substance, bound by a higher, colder calling. He was not a brother or a son or a subject. He was an instrument of God's will, and his life had no currency in the mortal world. When King Philip of France leveled his charges against them, this law became the capstone of his argument. He accused them of not being true Christians, of being a secret state within a state. And what better proof than this? An order of men who refused the very Christian act of ransom, who chose death over compromise, who operated by a set of rules that seemed alien to the rest of Christendom. The laws designed to make the Templars the perfect soldiers of Christ had in the end convinced the world they were something else entirely. They were so separate, so strange, so powerful, that they had to be destroyed. The very laws that forged their iron will were the same laws that drew the lightning strike of a jealous king. They were undone not by their sins, but by their virtues, twisted and reflected back at them in a carnival mirror of fear and greed. And so the riddle is solved. The Templars were not brought down by gold or armies. They were brought down by a prophecy they wrote for themselves. Their 5 forbidden laws were a staircase they built to ascend to God. But each step took them further away from the humanity they were meant to protect. They became a mystery, and humanity has always feared what it cannot understand. Their story is an echo in eternity, a timeless warning that the path to perfection can lead to a glorious and terrible isolation, and that a wall built to keep the world out can one day become a tomb.